Hello everyone, I'm Ryan, and I'm here to guide you today through the shadows of the Appalachian Mountains. If you use this video to fall asleep, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now settle in, get comfortable, and relax. They found her shoes arranged in a perfect circle. The morning fog clung to the Appalachian ridgeline like a living thing, thick and persistent, refusing to burn off even as the October sun climbed higher. Marcus Webb stood at the trailhead of the Blackwater Ridge Trail, adjusting the straps of his camera bag while his girlfriend, Jennifer Hayes, tied her bootlaces for the third time. She was stalling, he knew. She'd been quiet during the entire 3-hour drive from Charlotte, her usual chatter replaced by a tense silence that Marcus had tried to fill with excited talk about the photographs he planned to take. "You okay?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Jennifer looked up at him, her green eyes troubled beneath the brim of her new hiking cap, still creased from the package, tags removed just yesterday. "I don't know. Something feels off about this place." Marcus laughed, the sound too loud in the hushed forest. "That's exactly why we're here. Atmospheric, moody. This fog is perfect for the portfolio I'm building." He was 28, lean and tall, with the kind of casual confidence that came from never having encountered a problem he couldn't photograph his way out of. His Instagram had 40,000 followers who hung on his every carefully curated adventure shot. Jennifer was 26, a paralegal from the city who'd grown up in suburban comfort and whose idea of roughing it was a hotel without room service. She'd agreed to this trip because Marcus had been so enthusiastic, and because their relationship felt like it had been drifting lately, separate orbits that barely touched. Maybe this trip would fix that. Maybe getting out of their comfort zones would bring them closer. She didn't mention that she'd had a dream about these mountains 3 nights in a row. In each dream, something with too many eyes had been watching her from between the trees. They weren't alone at the trailhead. 2 other vehicles were parked in the gravel lot. A muddy Jeep with local plates and a rental sedan that looked as out of place as Jennifer felt. As they shouldered their packs, 3 college-aged kids emerged from the rental car, laughing and passing around a flask even though it wasn't yet 9 in the morning. "Yo, you guys heading up Blackwater?" called out the tallest of them, a muscular guy wearing a fraternity t-shirt despite the chill. His name was Tyler. They'd learn later, when it mattered. His friends were Chase and Madison, both with the same easy privilege written in their postures, the same assumption that nothing truly bad could happen to them. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, planning to camp at the ridgetop clearing." "Sick. We heard this place is supposed to be super haunted." Madison giggled, her phone already out, recording. "We're doing a whole thing for TikTok, exploring the most haunted trail in America. It's gonna be epic." Jennifer felt her stomach tighten. "Have any of you been hiking before?" The 3 exchanged glances and laughed. "How hard can it be?" Chase said. "You just walk, right?" From the Jeep, an older man emerged, late 50s, with weathered skin and the careful movements of someone who'd spent a lifetime in these mountains. He wore a ranger's uniform, though it looked faded and worn, as if he'd been wearing it for decades. His name tag read, R. Sullivan. "You folks heading up Blackwater?" His voice was gravelly, cautious. "That's the plan," Marcus said cheerfully, already mentally composing his first Instagram caption. Sullivan's expression darkened. "I'd advise against it. Weather's supposed to turn and—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We've had incidents on that trail." "What kind of incidents?" Jennifer asked, stepping closer. The ranger looked at her for a long moment, and she had the strangest feeling that he was assessing whether she would believe him. "People get turned around up there, lose the trail. Last month a woman went up with her husband. Only he came back. She just wasn't with him anymore. He couldn't explain where she'd gone. Said she was right behind him 1 second. Then the forest went quiet. That kind of quiet where you can't even hear birds. And when he turned around, she wasn't there. We searched for 2 weeks. Did you find her?" Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. "We did, 3 days ago." Found her sitting on a rock about 12 miles north of where she disappeared. She couldn't tell us how she got there. Couldn't remember anything about the missing weeks, but... He stopped again. But what? Marcus asked, his skepticism clear. She kept saying someone had been watching her the whole time. Said she felt eyes on her every moment, even when she closed her own. Said the forest had eyes in it. Tyler laughed. Dude, that's awesome. This is going to be the best content ever. Sullivan's jaw tightened. I'm serious, son. This mountain doesn't play around. You follow the trail, you stay together, and if you hear something calling your name, even if it sounds exactly like someone you know, you don't answer. You don't follow it. Yeah, we got it, Chase said dismissively. Don't go into the creepy woods alone. Super original advice, my guy. The ranger turned his attention back to Marcus and Jennifer. You two seem more sensible. Just pay attention up there. The mountain shows you what it wants you to see. And if you find anything odd, I mean really odd, like things that don't belong, you leave them alone. Don't touch them. Don't photograph them. Just keep walking. What kind of things? Marcus asked, his curiosity piqued despite himself. You'll know them when you see them. With that cryptic warning, Sullivan climbed back into his Jeep, but he didn't drive away. Jennifer noticed he just sat there, watching them as if waiting to see if they'd heed his warning or prove themselves fools. They proved themselves fools. The trail began easily enough, a well-maintained path through dense hardwood forest, the leaves already turning brilliant shades of amber and crimson. Marcus stopped every few minutes to photograph Jennifer against the backdrop of ancient trees, some of them so wide that 3 people couldn't circle them with linked arms. The college kids had rushed ahead, their voices echoing back through the forest, punctuated by laughter and the occasional burst of profanity. At least we won't have to deal with them, Jennifer said, relieved. But Marcus was frowning at his phone. That's weird. What? No signal. I had full bars in the parking lot. We're in the mountains, Marcus. That's normal. I guess. He didn't sound convinced. He was the type who was rarely out of cell range, whose entire life existed in a state of constant connectivity. The sudden silence from his device felt like a physical absence. They walked for another hour, the trail growing steeper, the trees pressing closer. The fog hadn't lifted. If anything, it had thickened, creating a gray world where sounds became muffled and distances impossible to judge. Jennifer kept glancing over her shoulder, unable to shake the feeling that they were being followed. Several times she could have sworn she saw movement in her peripheral vision, a shadow that vanished when she turned to look directly at it. Marcus, do you feel like we're being watched? He was adjusting his camera settings, not really paying attention. It's just the forest, babe. Trees can seem pretty imposing when you're not used to them. But even as he said it, the hair on the back of his neck prickled. There was something about this place. The light had a strange quality, diffuse and directionless, and the sounds were wrong. In a healthy forest, you should hear birds, insects, the rustle of small animals in the undergrowth. Here there was only their footsteps and their breathing and a vast, watchful silence. They came around a bend in the trail and stopped dead. Standing in the middle of the path, maybe 50 yards ahead, was a deer, but something about it was profoundly wrong. It stood too still, its posture too rigid. Its legs were slightly too long, jointed at angles that didn't quite match anatomy, and its head, when it turned to look at them, moved with a mechanical precision that no animal should possess. What the hell is that? Jennifer whispered. Marcus raised his camera automatically, zooming in. Through the viewfinder, the wrongness became even more apparent. The deer's eyes were positioned slightly too far apart. Its mouth, when it opened, revealed teeth that were too flat, too human-like. And it was looking directly at them with an intelligence that made Marcus's blood run cold. We should go around it, Jennifer said, already backing up. Wait, I need to get this shot. Marcus, no, something's wrong with it. He hesitated, torn between his photographer's instinct and the primal part of his brain that was screaming at him to run. The knot deer took a step toward them, its movement jerky and wrong, like a marionette controlled by someone who'd never seen a real animal move. They went around it, pushing through the undergrowth, branches catching at their clothes and skin. Behind them, they heard it, not following exactly, but paralleling their path, keeping pace. When Jennifer dared to look back, she saw it moving through the trees, its impossible legs carrying it over obstacles that should have stopped it, its head always turned in their direction. "Don't look at it," Marcus said, his voice tight with fear he was trying to suppress. "Just keep moving." They scrambled back onto the trail 100 yards up, both of them breathing hard. The knot deer was nowhere to be seen, but the feeling of being watched had intensified tenfold. Jennifer could feel eyes on her back, her sides, boring into her from every direction at once. "We should go back," she said. "We're already 2 hours in. The campsite is only another hour ahead. It'll be fine once we get there and set up. Open space, fire, we'll be okay." Jennifer wanted to argue, but she was also terrified of walking back down that trail alone, and she knew Marcus well enough to know that once he'd decided on something, he was stubborn as hell. They'd been together for 2 years, and in that time she'd learned that his confidence could be both his best and worst quality. He was decisive, sure of himself, but sometimes that meant he couldn't see danger until it was too late. They continued upward. The trail grew narrower, the forest more oppressive. Moss hung from branches like tattered curtains, and the fog had become so thick that visibility dropped to barely 20 feet. They passed through groves of mountain laurel, the twisted branches forming tunnels that seemed to shift and close behind them. Several times, Jennifer was certain they'd passed the same oddly shaped rock formation, even though the trail hadn't doubled back. Then Marcus stopped so suddenly that Jennifer almost walked into him. "What?" she began, then saw what he was staring at. Off to the left of the trail, about 30 feet into the forest, stood a staircase. It was made of metal, old and rusted, the kind you might find in an industrial building or a fire escape. It rose about 15 feet into the air and simply ended. No platform at the top, no building it could have belonged to, just a staircase standing alone in the middle of the ancient forest, surrounded by trees that had clearly been growing for centuries. "How is that here?" Jennifer breathed. Marcus was already moving toward it, camera raised. "Don't." Jennifer grabbed his arm. "The ranger said if we see something odd, we should leave it alone. It's just an old staircase, probably left over from some long-gone fire tower or something. There's no structure, nothing it could have been attached to. And look at the trees around it, they're not disturbed at all. It's like it just appeared here." Marcus pulled away from her grip. "I need to get photos of this. This is incredible. Do you know how many followers this will get me?" "Marcus, please." But he was already pushing through the undergrowth, his eyes fixed on the staircase with a fascination that bordered on obsession. Jennifer stood frozen on the trail, every instinct screaming at her not to follow, but also not to let him go alone. She followed. As they got closer, the wrongness of the staircase became more apparent. The rust had patterns in it that seemed almost deliberate, like some kind of language or writing. The metal itself had a strange quality. It seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And the air around it felt different, heavier, charged with a kind of malevolent potential. "Marcus, please, let's just go." But he was circling it, taking shots from every angle. Completely absorbed. The way the fog interacts with it is incredible, and look at this detail work. Whoever made this was skilled. "Or whatever made it," Jennifer muttered. Marcus stepped onto the first stair. "No." Jennifer lunged forward, but he was already 2 steps up, then 3. "It's fine. See? Totally stable. I just want to get a shot from higher up. The perspective will be amazing." He climbed higher. 4 steps. 5. Jennifer stood at the bottom, her heart hammering, unable to look away even though some deep part of her knew she shouldn't be watching this. The forest around them had gone completely silent. Even the sound of Marcus's footsteps on the metal stairs was muffled, as if something was absorbing the sound. At the 7th step, Marcus paused. "That's weird." "What? What's weird?" "Come down, please come down." "I can see. There's something at the top, like a door." But that's impossible. I could see from the ground that it just ends. Jennifer couldn't see anything from her angle, just Marcus standing on the stairs looking up at something she couldn't see. "Marcus, get down from there right now." His voice, when it came, sounded distant despite him being only 15 feet away. "Someone's up here." "Marcus, it's okay. They're friendly. They're showing me something." Oh, wow, Jennifer, you have to see this. You have to come up here. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever..." Jennifer ran. Not up the stairs to get him, but back to the trail, her body making the decision before her mind caught up. She heard Marcus calling after her, his voice changing, becoming not quite right, the tone shifting, the cadence off, like something was trying to imitate him but didn't quite understand how human speech worked. She burst back onto the trail and kept running, tears streaming down her face, branches whipping at her skin. Behind her she could hear footsteps, heavy, rhythmic, not quite matching the pattern of human feet, and under that, a sound like metal creaking, like the staircase itself was moving. She didn't look back. Jennifer ran until her lungs burned and her legs trembled, until she came around a bend and nearly collided with Tyler, Chase, and Madison. They were sitting on rocks beside the trail, passing the flask around, their earlier bravado somewhat diminished. "Whoa, what's wrong?" Tyler asked, standing up as Jennifer doubled over, gasping. "My boyfriend, the stairs. We have to go back." "Stairs?" Madison frowned. "What stairs?" "In the forest. There's a metal staircase and Marcus climbed it and something was up there and..." Chase laughed nervously. "You're messing with us, right? Like, trying to scare us because we made fun of that ranger dude?" "I'm not. We have to help him." But even as she said it, Jennifer realized she had no idea where the staircase was. She'd run blindly, taking turns she couldn't remember. The trail behind her looked unfamiliar, the trees arranged in patterns she didn't recognize. And the fog had grown so thick that she couldn't see more than 10 feet in any direction. "How long have you guys been sitting here?" she asked. Tyler shrugged. "Maybe 20 minutes? We were waiting for the weather to clear a bit. This fog is insane." 20 minutes. Jennifer had been with Marcus maybe 5 minutes ago. How could she have run for 15 minutes without noticing? "What time is it?" Madison checked her phone. 2:30. Impossible. They'd encountered the staircase around 11, maybe 11:30. Jennifer couldn't have lost 3 hours. That can't be right. "My phone's been acting weird," Madison admitted. "But the timestamp should be accurate. Are you okay? You look really pale." Jennifer's head spun. Nothing made sense. The forest seemed to shift around her, the trees leaning in, the fog pulsing with a kind of malevolent life, and everywhere always the sensation of being watched by countless invisible eyes. "We need to find the ranger," she said, "or call for help. Do any of you have signal?" 3 head shakes. Okay. We stick together and we head back down, all of us. Right now. "But we just got here," Chase protested. "Chase? And what about your boyfriend?" "He's..." Jennifer's voice broke. "I don't think we can help him. I don't think anyone can." Tyler's earlier bravado had faded. He looked around at the fog-shrouded forest with new wariness. "You're seriously freaking me out right now." "Good, you should be freaked out. This place is wrong. The ranger tried to warn us and we didn't listen." Jennifer started walking back the way she'd come, or at least, the way she thought she'd come. The trail markers should have been obvious, but nothing looked right. The 4 of them walked in silence, staying close together. The fog pressed in on all sides, and the temperature seemed to be dropping despite it being early afternoon. Jennifer could hear their footsteps, 4 sets of feet on packed earth and stone. But occasionally, she'd hear a 5th set, matching their pace perfectly, always just out of sight in the fog. "Did you guys hear that?" Madison whispered. "Hear what?" But Jennifer had heard it too. A voice calling out from somewhere ahead. It sounded like Marcus. "Jennifer, where did you go? Jennifer, help me, I'm hurt." She stopped walking. "That's not him." "What do you mean? That's definitely a guy calling for help." Tyler was already moving toward the voice. Jennifer grabbed his arm. Don't. The ranger said if you hear someone calling your name, don't answer, don't follow it. That's insane. Someone could actually be hurt. It's not Marcus. It sounds like him, but it's not. Trust me. The voice came again, closer now, and this time Jennifer could hear the wrongness in it, the slight distortion, like a recording played back at slightly the wrong speed. Jennifer, why did you leave me? Come back. I need you to come back to the stairs. You have to see what I saw. It's so beautiful here. We can stay here. We can both see them. Come back. Madison had gone pale. Okay, that's definitely creepy. How is he? Whatever, how does it know your name? Because it was Marcus. Or it's using Marcus. Or Marcus saw something and now he's... Jennifer couldn't finish the thought. They kept moving. Faster now, practically jogging. The trail twisted and turned, and Jennifer had the terrible certainty that they were going in circles, that the forest was rearranging itself around them, keeping them lost. Then Chase stopped. Guys? What is that? Ahead of them, barely visible through the fog, was something that made Jennifer's blood freeze. It looked like a person standing on the trail, but the proportions were wrong. Too tall, arms too long, head tilted at an angle that would break a human neck. Is that a person? Madison's voice shook. It turned toward them, and though they couldn't see its face clearly through the fog, they could feel its attention settle on them like a physical weight. The pressure of those unseen eyes was enormous, crushing, making it hard to breathe. Back up, Jennifer whispered. Slowly. They retreated, keeping their eyes on the figure. It didn't move, just stood there watching them, waiting. Tyler's foot caught on a root and he stumbled, catching himself on a tree. The sound of branches rustling seemed unnaturally loud in the oppressive quiet. The figure's head tilted further, impossibly far, and then it took a step toward them. They ran. This time there was no pretense of staying calm, no attempt to walk with dignity. They sprinted through the fog-choked forest, the trail forgotten, just fleeing blindly from the thing behind them. Jennifer could hear it giving chase, the heavy, rhythmic footfalls that moved too fast, covered too much ground with each stride. And then, mercifully, the fog began to thin. They burst out of the dense forest into a clearing, and Jennifer recognized it. The ridgetop campsite Marcus had been aiming for. 3 fire rings, several flat spots for tents, and a stunning view of the valley below, though right now the view was nothing but gray fog. They collapsed in the center of the clearing, gasping for breath. The fog seemed reluctant to enter the open space, hovering at the tree line like a living thing considering whether to advance. What the fuck was that? Chase's voice was high with panic. What the actual fuck was that? I don't know, Jennifer said, though she had suspicions she didn't want to voice. The ranger's warnings echoed in her head. The mountain shows you what it wants you to see. We need to get off this mountain, Madison said, already pulling out her phone. Still no signal. Tyler was staring back at the tree line. Where's the trail? We came from that direction, right? But I don't see the trail marker. They searched the perimeter of the clearing. There were several paths leading into the forest, but none of them were marked, and none of them looked like the well-maintained trail they'd been on. It was as if the clearing existed in isolation, disconnected from any way to reach it or leave it. This is wrong, Jennifer said, her voice hollow. This is all wrong. The sun was setting, impossibly because it should have been early afternoon, but the light was definitely fading, the sky taking on the deep orange and purple hues of dusk. Time wasn't working right on this mountain. The rules of the normal world didn't apply here. We should make a fire, Tyler said, and stay here until morning. Maybe things will make more sense in daylight. They gathered wood from the edge of the clearing, none of them willing to venture more than a few feet into the forest. As they worked, Jennifer became aware that they were being watched from the trees, not by one presence but by many, dozens of eyes fixed on them from the darkness between the trees. The fire, when they got it going, was a small comfort. They huddled around it as full darkness fell and the sounds began. First, just rustling in the undergrowth, then footsteps, circling the clearing, then voices, familiar voices, calling out to them. Madison heard her mother calling her home for dinner. Chase heard his dead brother asking him to come play. Tyler heard his girlfriend saying she was lost and needed help. And Jennifer heard Marcus. "Jennifer, I found the way down. Come on, follow my voice. I'm right here, just past the trees. We can go home together." She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "That's not him, that's not him." "Who's Marcus?" Tyler asked gently. "My boyfriend. He climbed the stairs and something took him. Or changed him, or... I don't know, but he's not Marcus anymore." The voices continued through the night, alternating between pleading and angry, between familiar and utterly alien. Shapes moved in the darkness beyond the firelight, sometimes human, sometimes distinctly not. The college kids had abandoned their earlier mockery, sitting in tight-faced terror, jumping at every sound. Around midnight, though Jennifer's phone now showed conflicting times, the numbers changing randomly, they heard something new. Singing. A woman's voice, clear and beautiful, carrying across the clearing. It was an old song, something that might have been sung in these mountains 100 years ago, and it was coming from one of the trails. A figure emerged from the darkness, and for a moment, Jennifer's heart leaped. Another person, someone who could help them. But as the figure came closer to the firelight, she realized her mistake. It was a woman, or had been once. She wore clothing from another era, a long dress, an apron, a bonnet. Her face was young, maybe 25, but her eyes were ancient and terribly sad. She was translucent, not quite solid, and she left no footprints in the dirt. "You shouldn't have come here," the woman said, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. "This mountain doesn't let go of what it takes." "What is this place?" Jennifer managed to ask. "The old place, the hungry place. These mountains are older than humanity, and they remember older things, darker things. The people who lived here first, they knew. They made pacts. They gave offerings. They followed the rules. The woman, the ghost, the spirit, whatever she was, drifted closer. I didn't follow the rules. In 1887, I heard my husband calling from the forest, and I followed his voice. But it wasn't him. It was never him. And now I walk here, between forever listening to him call for me." "How do we get out?" Tyler asked, his voice breaking. "You don't. Not all of you. The mountain took something from you when you came here. Now it wants its payment. It always does." "What does it want?" Madison whispered. The woman looked at each of them in turn, her gaze heavy with pity and ancient grief. "One stays. One always stays. That's the price for the rest to leave." Jennifer felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. She thought of Marcus climbing those impossible stairs, being shown something so beautiful he couldn't resist. She thought of the ranger's warnings, of all the missing people, of the patterns they must have finally figured out. How do we choose? The question came out barely louder than a breath. You don't. It chooses. The woman began to fade, her form dissolving back into the fog. Her voice came one last time, distant and sorrowful. When the sun rises, you'll find a trail. All of you walk it together. By the time you reach the bottom, one of you won't be there anymore. You won't remember them. The forest will take them from your memory like they never existed at all. That's its mercy. You won't know what you lost. And then she was gone, and they were alone again with the fire and the watching darkness. They didn't speak for a long time. What was there to say? Finally, Chase broke the silence. She's lying. She has to be. We'll all get out. We just have to stick together. But Jennifer knew better. The mountain had already shown her its rules. It had taken Marcus right in front of her, and she had the terrible certainty that she wouldn't be the one to stay. She'd run when Marcus needed her. The mountain knew cowards. As dawn broke far too quickly, time still refusing to behave, they saw what the woman had promised. One of the trails now had markers, clear blazes showing the way down. They gathered their things in silence, the weight of what was coming pressing down on all of them. "We stay together," Tyler said firmly. "All the way down. We count off every few minutes. Nobody gets left behind." They started down the trail, walking in a tight group. Tyler counted them every minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, everyone here. The trail was easier than Jennifer remembered, as if the mountain was letting them leave now that it had what it wanted. The fog had lifted, revealing a bright autumn morning. Birds sang. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine and earth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Still good. They walked for an hour. 2. The trees began to thin. Jennifer could see the parking lot ahead, could see vehicles. But something felt wrong, like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. 1, 2, 3, Tyler said, then stopped. He looked confused. "Wait, why am I counting to 3? "Because there's 3 of us," Madison said, sounding uncertain. "Right? Tyler, me, and Jennifer." Jennifer's head swam with sudden vertigo. There had been 4 of them, hadn't there? But when she tried to remember the 4th person, there was nothing. Just a blank space in her memory where someone should have been. "Didn't we—" Chase began, then trailed off, his face scrunched in concentration. "Never mind. Must have been dreaming or something." They reached the parking lot. Sullivan's Jeep was still there, and the ranger was sitting on the hood looking like he'd been waiting for them. His face was grim but not surprised. "3 of you went up," he said quietly. 3 came back down. 4, Jennifer said automatically, then stopped. Had it been 4? She couldn't remember. She looked at the vehicles. Marcus's car, the rental sedan. Whose car was whose? It didn't matter. She had the keys to Marcus's car in her pocket. Of course she did. She'd driven them here, alone. She'd driven here alone because Marcus was... Jennifer clutched her head as 2 realities tried to coexist in her mind. She had come with Marcus. She had come alone. He had climbed the stairs. There had been no stairs. He had been taken. He had never existed. "It's always hardest on the first day," Sullivan said gently. "Your mind fights it, but by tomorrow, you won't remember anything was wrong. The mountain takes them completely, like they were never born. That's its gift and its curse." "Who did we lose?" Jennifer asked, tears streaming down her face even though she couldn't remember why she was crying. "I don't know. I never do. But someone went up that mountain with you, and now they're part of it. Forever." Jennifer looked back up at the trail, at the fog-shrouded peaks that stretched into the distance. Somewhere up there, someone she'd cared about was calling for help, or singing old songs, or climbing stairs that led nowhere. Someone whose name she could almost remember, whose face was just at the edge of her memory. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the mountain, to whoever she'd lost. "I'm so sorry." The drive home was quiet. In the back seat, Tyler and Chase and Madison sat in contemplative silence, each of them occasionally reaching for a memory that wasn't there anymore, like probing the socket of a missing tooth. By the time they reached Charlotte, even that would be gone. They'd remember a nice hike, a little spooky because of the fog, but ultimately uneventful. But Jennifer would remember. Not the details, not the name or the face, but the feeling. The crushing weight of guilt, the certainty that she'd left someone behind. It would haunt her dreams. That sense of watching someone climb stairs into the sky while she ran away. She'd wake up crying and not know why. The mountain keeps its secrets, and sometimes those secrets are people. 3 months later, a young couple would stand at the Blackwater Ridge trailhead, excited to hike and take photos for their Instagram. A ranger named Sullivan would warn them about the mountain, about its strange rules and hungry spaces. They would ignore him because people always did, and the cycle would continue as it had for centuries, as it would for centuries more. The Appalachian Mountains are ancient beyond human reckoning, and they remember things that existed before humanity drew breath. They remember the old pacts, the old hungers. They remember, and they take what they're owed. Jennifer never went hiking again. But sometimes on foggy autumn mornings, she'd stand at her window and look toward the mountains. and she'd swear she could hear someone calling her name. The voice was familiar in a way that made her heart ache, though she couldn't say why. She never answered. She'd learned that lesson at least. But somewhere in those ancient hills, in a space that exists between the world of the living and something older and darker, a man named Marcus Webb walks endless trails that loop back on themselves. He climbs stairs that lead nowhere, always believing that something beautiful waits at the top. He calls out for Jennifer, his voice growing more distorted with each passing day, less human, more like the mountain itself trying to speak through him. And when new hikers come, drawn by the beauty and the mystery and their own fatal confidence, they sometimes hear him. They sometimes follow. They sometimes climb. The mountain is patient. The mountain is hungry. The mountain always takes what it's owed, and it never, ever forgets. The children who returned couldn't remember their names. The Whitmore family had been planning their Appalachian vacation for 8 months, ever since Karen's sister had posted those breathtaking photos from her own trip to the Blue Ridge Mountains. Karen sat in the passenger seat of their SUV, watching the forested slopes rise up around them like green waves frozen in time, while her husband David drove with the careful attention of a man who rarely left the suburbs. In the back seat, their children, Emma, age 9, and Lucas, age 6, had their faces pressed against the windows, marveling at a world so different from their manicured neighborhood in suburban Cleveland. "Are we almost there?" Lucas asked for the 17th time that hour. 20 more minutes, David said, glancing at the GPS even though he'd memorized the route. He was 42, an accountant whose life revolved around order and predictability. This trip made him nervous in ways he couldn't articulate. Something about the vastness of these old mountains, the way they seemed to swallow the sky. Karen was 39, a middle school teacher who believed in preparedness and structure. She'd packed enough supplies for twice their planned 3-day stay. First aid kit, extra batteries, downloaded maps, emergency blankets, water purification tablets. Her friends had joked that she was preparing for the apocalypse, not a family camping trip. But Karen had always believed in being ready for anything. She hadn't been ready for this. The cabin they'd rented sat at the end of a winding dirt road, surrounded by hemlock and oak trees so old they seemed to predate civilization. It was charming in a rustic way, 2 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, a porch with rocking chairs that overlooked a valley shrouded in perpetual mist. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. The nearest town, a fading Appalachian community called Whisper Creek, was 15 miles down the mountain. "It's perfect," Karen said, though something in her voice suggested she was trying to convince herself. They spent the first day settling in, exploring the immediate area around the cabin. Emma found a creek about 50 yards into the woods, clear and cold, running over smooth stones. Lucas discovered a salamander under a rotting log and insisted on keeping it in a jar until Karen made him release it. David grilled burgers on the cabin's propane grill while Karen organized their supplies with the methodical precision that had made her such an effective teacher. That night, sitting around the fireplace, David pulled out the trail map he'd picked up at a gas station. "There's a waterfall about 2 miles from here, the Little Bear Trail. It's rated easy, perfect for families. We should go tomorrow." "Can we, Mom? Please?" Emma's eyes shone with excitement. She was at that age where she was trying to be grown up but was still young enough to find magic in everything. "I don't know," Karen said, studying the map with a frown. "It says here that hikers should stay on marked trails and never go alone." "We'll all be together," David assured her. "It'll be fine. This is what we came here for, to experience nature as a family." Karen wanted to argue, but she'd been the one pushing for this trip, insisting they needed to get away from screens and schedules and the suffocating routine of suburban life. She couldn't back out now because of some vague unease she couldn't even name. "Okay," she agreed, "but we stay together. No wandering off." They went to bed early, tired from the drive and the mountain air. Karen lay awake long after David started snoring, listening to the sounds of the forest outside. It was so much louder than she'd expected. The constant chirp of insects, the rustle of wind through leaves, the occasional crack of a branch that made her imagine things moving through the darkness. And underneath it all, barely audible, something that might have been singing. A woman's voice, wordless and haunting, drifting through the trees. She told herself it was just the wind. Morning broke cold and bright, the sun burning off the mist in patches, revealing the forest in all its ancient glory. They ate a quick breakfast of cereal and instant coffee, packed day packs with water and snacks, and set out for the trail. David carried a compass and a paper map, refusing to rely solely on his phone's GPS. Karen had insisted on that. Technology failed in the mountains, everyone knew that. The trailhead was marked by a weathered wooden sign, the paint faded but still legible. Little Bear Trail, 2.3 miles to Falls. Someone had carved something into the wood below the official sign, old enough that moss had grown in the grooves. Karen leaned closer to read it. Don't look if they call. What does that mean? Emma asked, reading over her mother's shoulder. Just some nonsense, David said quickly. Probably kids trying to scare people. Come on, let's get going. The trail started easy enough, a well-maintained path through mixed hardwood forest. Shafts of sunlight broke through the canopy, illuminating columns of dust and pollen that hung in the air like golden snow. Emma ran ahead, then circled back, her energy seemingly endless. Lucas held Karen's hand, his small fingers gripping tight whenever the shadows grew too deep. They'd been walking for maybe 30 minutes when they encountered the first strange thing. A circle of stones, each about the size of a basketball, arranged in a perfect ring about 10 feet in diameter. In the center of the circle sat a doll, old, handmade with button eyes and hair made from corn silk. It had been placed carefully, sitting upright, facing the trail as if watching for something. That's creepy, Emma said, stopping short. David laughed nervously. Someone's art project, probably. You know, like those rock stacking things people do. But Karen was counting the stones. 13. And the doll's button eyes seemed to follow her as she walked past, though she knew that was impossible. She hurried her family along, fighting the urge to look back. The trail grew steeper, the trees pressing closer. The forest had gone quiet. No bird songs, no insects, just their footsteps and breathing. Karen noticed it first, that oppressive silence, but she didn't mention it. David was already on edge, jumping at every snapping twig. No need to make it worse. Then Lucas stopped walking. What's wrong, honey? Karen asked, kneeling beside him. His face had gone pale, his eyes fixed on something in the trees to their left. There's a boy watching us. They all turned to look. The forest was dense there, shadows pooling between the trunks, but Karen couldn't see anything that looked like a child. Where? David asked, his voice tight. Lucas pointed. Right there. He's behind that big tree. He's waving at me. I don't see anyone, Emma said, moving closer to her father. Lucas, there's no one there, Karen said gently, though her heart was pounding. Maybe it was a deer or a shadow. It's not a shadow. He's right there. Lucas's voice rose in pitch, taking on the edge of panic. He wants me to come play with him. He says his name is... Lucas stopped, his mouth working silently as if he'd forgotten what he was going to say. Says his name is what? David asked. Lucas's expression went blank. I don't remember, but he's not there anymore. They stood in silence for a moment, all of them staring at the spot where Lucas had seen something, or thought he had, or maybe actually had. Karen couldn't decide which possibility scared her more. Let's keep moving, she said, pulling Lucas close. We'll be at the waterfall soon. But as they walked, Karen kept glancing back over her shoulder. Once, just once, she thought she saw movement, a small shape darting between trees, too quick to make out clearly. When she blinked, it was gone. The waterfall, when they finally reached it, was beautiful. Water poured over a 30-foot cliff into a pool so clear you could see the stones at the bottom. Mist rose in clouds, catching the sunlight and fracturing it into rainbows. It was like something out of a postcard, and for a moment, Karen's anxiety eased. "Can we go swimming?" Emma asked. "The water's probably freezing," David said, but he was already unlacing his hiking boots. They spent an hour at the falls, dipping their feet in the icy water, eating sandwiches on the flat rocks, letting the sound of falling water wash away the strangeness of the hike. Lucas seemed to have forgotten about the boy in the woods, laughing as he tried to catch minnows in his cupped hands. Emma found a flat rock and started skipping stones across the pool. Karen took photos with her phone, wanting to capture this perfect moment. Her family happy and together, surrounded by nature's beauty. Later, when she looked at those photos, she would see things she hadn't noticed at the time. In 3 of the pictures, there were shapes in the background, half hidden by trees. Small shapes, child-sized, watching. But for now, she was just a mother enjoying a beautiful day with her family. The hike back should have been easier. Downhill, already knowing the way. But from the start, something felt wrong. The trail looked different somehow, the trees arranged in patterns Karen didn't remember. They passed the stone circle again, but the doll was gone. In its place sat 13 small shoes, all different sizes, all worn and old, arranged in a neat row. "David, those weren't there before," Karen whispered. "Someone's messing with hikers," David said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe we should move a little faster." They picked up their pace, the children sensing their parents' unease and falling silent. The forest remained quiet, unnaturally so, as if everything living had fled or was holding its breath. Karen's skin prickled with the constant sensation of being watched from every direction at once. That's when they heard the singing. It started distant, barely audible over their footsteps. A child's voice, high and sweet, singing something that might have been a nursery rhyme. The melody was familiar in a way that made Karen's stomach turn, like something half-remembered from a nightmare. "Do you hear that?" Emma asked, stopping. They all heard it. The voice grew louder, or closer, or both. Words began to emerge from the wordless tune. "Come and play, come and stay, we've been waiting every day. In the deep where shadows creep, where the mountain secrets keep. We need to go, now." Karen grabbed both children's hands and started pulling them forward, but Lucas resisted. "They're calling me," he said, his voice dreamy and distant. "Ian, they want me to come play. They say it's my turn." "No one's calling you," David said firmly, scooping Lucas up into his arms. "We're going back to the cabin." But the singing continued, and now it seemed to be coming from multiple directions, multiple voices, all children, all singing that same terrible song. And under the singing, Karen heard something else. Footsteps, small and numerous, keeping pace with them through the forest. Emma suddenly pointed ahead on the trail. Look, standing in the middle of the path, maybe 20 yards ahead, was a little girl. She wore a white dress that looked like it was from a different era, something a pioneer child might have worn. Her blonde hair hung in ringlets around a face that was too pale, too perfect, like a porcelain doll. She stood perfectly still, watching them with eyes that didn't blink. "Hello," the little girl said, and her voice carried easily despite the distance. "Will you come play with us? We've been so lonely." "No, thank you," Karen called back, her voice shaking. "We need to get home." The little girl tilted her head at an angle that was just slightly wrong. "But we want to play. We've been waiting so long. The mountain said we could have new friends." More children appeared, emerging from the forest on both sides of the trail. Boys and girls all around Emma and Lucas's ages, all wearing old-fashioned clothes, all with that same too pale skin and too perfect stillness. There must have been a dozen of them, forming a semicircle that slowly closed in. "David," Karen's voice was barely a whisper. "Run," he said. "Off the trail. Run." They crashed into the forest, branches whipping at their faces, roots trying to trip them. Behind them, they heard laughter, high, bright, childish laughter that should have been innocent, but instead sounded hungry. The children were following, moving through the undergrowth with an ease that was impossible, their white clothes never snagging, their pale faces always visible between the trees. Lucas was crying, clutching David's neck. Emma ran beside Karen, her breath coming in panicked gasps. They had no idea where they were going, just away, always away from those terrible children and their invitation to play. They burst through a thicket and stumbled into a clearing they didn't recognize. In the center stood a structure that made Karen's blood freeze, a small cabin, ancient and half-collapsed, its windows dark and empty. Around it, arranged in careful patterns, were toys. Hundreds of toys. Dolls and carved wooden animals and rusted trucks and jump ropes, all laid out in circles and spirals, all old enough that moss grew on them. "What is this place?" David breathed. The singing had stopped. The forest had gone silent again, but this time the silence felt expectant, waiting. Karen slowly turned in a circle, and that's when she saw them. The children, standing at the edge of the clearing in a perfect circle, not moving, not speaking, just watching. "Mom, I'm scared," Emma whispered, pressing against Karen's side. "Me too, baby. Me too." The little girl in the white dress stepped forward from the circle. "You came to our playhouse, that means you have to play. Those are the rules. The mountain made the rules, and everyone has to follow them." "We don't want to play," David said, trying to sound firm. "We're leaving. But you're here, and when you're here, you have to play. Or..." The little girl smiled, and her teeth were too sharp, too many. "You have to stay," Lucas whispered in David's ear, his voice carrying in the stillness. "Dad, they're not real children. They're something else wearing children's shapes. From the mouths of babes." Because Lucas was right. Now that Karen looked closer, she could see the wrongness. The children's movements were too synchronized, too precise. Their shadows fell at the wrong angles, and their eyes reflected the light like an animal's, glowing faintly amber in the dimness of the forest. "What are you?" Karen asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. "We're the ones who played too long," the girl said. "We're the ones who got lost. We're the ones the mountain kept. And now we're never alone because the mountain always sends us new friends." Another voice came from the forest, older, adult, familiar. "Karen? David? Where are you guys?" Karen's heart leaped. That was her sister's voice. Rachel, who had recommended this place, who had come here last year and loved it. But Rachel was in Ohio. There was no way she could be here. "Don't answer," Emma hissed, grabbing her mother's arm. "That's not Aunt Rachel." The voice came again, closer now. "I'm lost. Please help me." "Karen? Is that you?" It sounded exactly like Rachel. The same slight rasp from years of smoking, the same inflection, the same accent. But Emma was right. It couldn't be Rachel. "If you answer, they get stronger," Lucas said, still in David's arms. His eyes were unfocused, like he was seeing something the adults couldn't. "If you say their names, they can touch you. Don't say anything, don't answer anything." "How do you know that?" David asked his son. "The boy in the woods told me. The real boy, not the pretend ones. He was trying to warn me." More voices now, calling from different directions. David's father, dead 5 years. Karen's college roommate. Emma's best friend from school. All of them calling out, claiming to be lost, begging for help. The children around the clearing remained silent, watching, waiting. Karen made a decision. "We walk. Straight ahead, through their circle. Don't look at them. Don't speak to them. Don't acknowledge them. Just walk." "Mom, what if they..." Emma started. "They can't touch us if we don't engage. That's the rule." Lucas figured it out. Karen hoped she was right. "Hold hands. Don't let go no matter what." They formed a chain, David carrying Lucas, Emma between her parents, Karen at the rear. They started walking toward the edge of the clearing, straight toward the gap in the circle where 2 of the children stood. The children didn't move as they approached. Their eyes followed the family, but they remained frozen in place like mannequins or dolls. Karen kept her gaze fixed ahead, fighting the urge to look at their faces, to meet their eyes. As they passed between the 2 children, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. Karen could see her breath. The children's voices whispered all around them, close enough to feel the words against their skin. "Play with us. Stay with us. The mountain wants you. You can't leave." You're ours now." But they didn't touch. They didn't move. Whatever rules governed this place, the family wasn't breaking them. They made it through the circle and into the forest beyond. Karen risked one glance back and immediately wished she hadn't. The children were following now. A silent procession, their movements jerky and wrong, like marionettes controlled by an amateur. They weren't walking, they were being pulled, dragged, their feet barely touching the ground. "Faster!" Karen urged, and they began to run again. The forest seemed to resist them, branches reaching out to catch their clothes, roots rising up to trip them, the ground becoming soft and treacherous. But they pushed on, driven by pure terror, crashing through undergrowth that tore at their skin and clothes. Then miraculously they saw it, the dirt road leading to their cabin. They burst out of the tree line and stumbled onto the road, and the moment they did, everything changed. The oppressive silence lifted. Birds sang. A breeze rustled the leaves. The temperature returned to normal. Karen looked back. The forest edge was empty. No children, no voices, just ordinary trees and ordinary sunlight. "Is everyone okay?" David asked, setting Lucas down and checking him for injuries. They were scratched and bruised, their clothes torn, but otherwise unhurt. They stumbled back to the cabin in shocked silence, none of them quite able to process what had happened. "We're leaving," Karen said as soon as they were inside. "Right now. We pack up and we leave." "Agreed," David said, already throwing their things into bags. But as they packed, Emma stood at the window, looking out at the forest. "Mom, there's someone standing at the tree line." Karen joined her daughter at the window. Standing just at the edge of the forest, barely visible in the shadows, was the little girl in the white dress. She raised one pale hand and waved. Then she pointed, not at them but at Lucas, who was in the other room with David. A piece of paper slid under the cabin's front door. Karen picked it up with trembling hands. It was old, yellowed, the writing in a child's careful script. "You broke the rules. You have to give us something back. One stays. Choose before dark, or we choose for you." The sun was already setting, shadows growing long. "David," Karen called, her voice hollow. "We have a problem." They gathered in the cabin's main room. The note passed between them with shaking hands. Outside, the forest had come alive with movement, shapes flitting between trees, white dresses glowing in the dimming light, pale faces watching from every shadow. "This is insane," David said. "We're calling the police." But his phone had no signal. Neither did Karen's. The cabin's landline was dead, just static, and underneath it, faintly, children singing. "They're not going to let us leave," Emma said quietly. She was sitting on the couch, arms wrapped around herself. "Not all of us." "No," Karen said firmly. "Absolutely not. We're all getting out of here." "Mom, there are rules. Lucas said so, and we broke them by going into that clearing." Emma's voice was steady, matter-of-fact, and that scared Karen more than if she'd been hysterical. "Someone has to stay." "Emma, stop talking like that." But Lucas was nodding, his face pale. "She's right. The boy told me. He said his family broke the rules too, and they had to choose. They chose him because he was the smallest. That was in 1923. He's been alone ever since, except for the pretend children. He doesn't want to be alone anymore." "What boy?" David demanded. "Lucas, what boy?" "The real boy, the one who was warning me. He's been trying to help people, but the mountain is stronger than him. He can't save anyone. He can just warn them." Karen felt like she was losing her mind. This couldn't be happening. They were a normal family from Cleveland, here for a normal vacation. Things like this didn't happen to normal people. But the faces pressed against the windows begged to differ. Night fell with unnatural speed, the last light dying as if snuffed out. The cabin was surrounded now, dozens of pale children standing in a circle around it, singing that terrible song. And they were getting closer, one step at a time, tightening the noose. "We barricade ourselves in," David said, already pushing furniture against the door. "We wait until morning. Maybe they can only come out at night. But even as he said it, a child's face appeared at the window inside the cabin. The little girl in the white dress stood in the corner, materializing from nothing, her amber eyes fixed on Lucas. "Time's almost up," she said. "Choose, or we take all of you." "Get away from my son," Karen screamed, putting herself between the girl and Lucas. "We don't want him," the girl said. "We want the one who broke the rules, the one who entered the playhouse. That was—" She tilted her head, considering. "All of you. So any of you will do." David stepped forward. "Take me. Let my family go, and I'll stay." "No." Karen grabbed his arm. "David, no. I'm the father. It's my job to protect you. I won't let anything happen to my kids." But Emma was standing now too, tears streaming down her face. "It should be me. I'm the oldest. I'm supposed to look after Lucas. I can do this." "Absolutely not," Karen said, her voice breaking. "Neither of you. We'll find another way. There is no other way." "Mom," Emma said softly. "Look at them." The cabin was full of children now, dozens of them, all those pale faces and amber eyes, filling every corner, every shadow. The walls seemed to be breathing, contracting, the cabin shrinking around them. Lucas slipped his small hand into Karen's. "I'm not scared," he said quietly. "The boy showed me it's not so bad. You don't really go away. You just change. You become part of the mountain, and you're never alone." "Lucas, baby, no. The mountain is old, Mom. Older than anything. It's been here since before people, and it'll be here after. It gets lonely, that's all. It just wants someone to talk to." Karen was sobbing now, clutching her son, David and Emma joining them in a tight huddle. The choice was impossible. How do you choose which child to sacrifice? What kind of parent could make that decision? The little girl in white spoke again, her voice almost gentle. "The longer you wait, the worse it gets. Choose now, and the rest go free. Wait much longer and the mountain takes everyone." "I'll stay," Karen heard herself say. The words came from somewhere deep inside, some primal part of her that would burn the world to save her children. "Take me instead." "Mom, no!" Emma and Lucas cried in unison. "Karen, we'll find another way," David said desperately. But Karen had already stepped away from her family, already placed herself between them and the circle of impossible children. "I'm a mother. This is what we do. We protect our babies, even from this." The little girl smiled, and for a moment, Karen saw something in her eyes. Relief, gratitude. A trade offered freely. The mountain accepts. The world lurched sideways. Karen felt herself being pulled, not physically but in some deeper way, like her soul was being drawn out of her body. The cabin faded, became translucent, and through its walls she could see the forest, but not the forest as it was. This was the forest as it had been centuries ago, as it would be centuries hence, all times existing simultaneously. She could see the trees growing and dying in fast forward, see animals long extinct running beneath their boughs, see people who wouldn't be born for generations walking trails that didn't yet exist, and she could see the children, the real children, not the pale imitations. She saw the boy from 1923, saw him playing with a younger brother in a clearing, saw him wander away to chase a rabbit, saw him find the impossible playhouse, saw his parents' faces when they realized the choice they had to make. She saw a girl from 1847, lost and alone, singing herself to sleep in the hollow of an ancient oak. She saw twins from 1776, holding hands as they walked deeper and deeper into the forest, following a voice that sounded like their mother. She saw them all, every child the mountain had taken, everyone preserved in its memory, trapped in its dreaming, neither alive nor dead, but something in between. They weren't monsters. They had been children once, before the mountain had needed them. "Mom!" Emma's voice, distant, fading. "Karen!" David screaming, trying to reach her. "Mama, come back!" Lucas, his small hand grasping at air. But she was already going, already being absorbed into the mountain's vast and hungry consciousness. Her last thought was a prayer that they would forget her quickly, that the pain would fade, that they would be happy. Then there was nothing but green darkness and the weight of centuries and the endless and patient waiting of stone. David, Emma, and Lucas stood in the cabin, but Karen was gone. Not stepped outside, not hiding, gone in a way that made no sense. One moment she'd been standing in front of them, and the next moment there had been nothing, as if she'd never existed in that space at all. The pale children were gone too. The cabin was empty, normal, just a rustic rental with questionable plumbing and a persistent smell of pine. "Where's Mom?" Lucas asked, his voice small. David looked around wildly. She was right here." "Dad, where did Mom go?" Emma's voice rose in panic, but even as they searched, even as they called for her, the memory began to slip away. Karen's face became harder to picture. Her voice faded from their minds. By the time the sun rose, they would remember coming to the mountains as a family of 3. By the time they reached Cleveland, they wouldn't remember anyone named Karen at all. The mountain always collects its debts, and it never forgets, even when it forces others to. 3 days later, a family of 4 checked into the cabin: mother, father, 2 kids. They planned to hike the Little Bear Trail. The father mentioned that the pictures online had looked beautiful. The mother said she'd heard about a waterfall. As they drove up, they passed a ranger at the base of the mountain, an old man named Sullivan who tried to wave them down, tried to warn them. But they were on vacation, excited, running late. They waved back cheerfully and kept going. Sullivan watched them disappear up the winding road and sighed. He pulled out a worn notebook, the kind that had been carried so long the cover was soft as leather. Inside were names and dates going back decades. Some entries had been crossed out, some hadn't. He added a new entry: Family of 4, October 12th, Little Bear Trail. Then he sat in his truck and waited, as he'd waited so many times before, to see if they would all come back down. They usually didn't. The mountain was hungry. The mountain was patient. The mountain was old beyond human reckoning, and it had learned long ago that people came to it willingly, seeking its beauty, never believing the warnings until it was too late. And somewhere in its green depths, in a space between the physical world and something older and stranger, Karen walked eternal trails that looped back on themselves. She was not alone. The children were with her, and they were grateful for her company. They sang their songs, and she sang with them, though she couldn't remember why the melody made her sad. Sometimes, when new hikers came, she would try to warn them. She would appear on the trail or call out from the forest, trying to tell them to turn back. But the words never came out right, and the mountain always twisted her warnings into invitations. She couldn't remember her name anymore, couldn't remember where she'd come from or why she felt like something important was missing. All she knew was the forest and the eternal green twilight and the company of children who weren't children anymore. The mountain kept her. The mountain kept them all.